Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. I'm Josh Minkler. I'm the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Indiana. Back in September of 2015, federal law enforcement served search warrants in connection with a vast fraud and kickback scheme involving the Indiana nursing home chain American Senior Communities. Last week, a grand jury here in the Southern District of Indiana, sitting here in Indianapolis, indicted 4 individuals. Jim Burkhart, the former CEO of ASC, Dan Benson, the former COO, our Chief Operating Officer for ASC, Stephen Ganote, a friend of Mr. Burkhart's who set up over a dozen shell companies to conceal this scheme, and Josh Burkhart, Jim Burkhart's brother, who was cut in on this scheme. Jim Burkhart, Stephen Ganote, and Josh Burkhart have been arrested today. Dan Benson is in the process of turning himself in to law enforcement, and we expect him to be in custody today. There are 4 principal charges in the indictment returned by the grand jury. The first is a conspiracy to commit wire and healthcare fraud, which carries a penalty of up to 20 years in prison. The second is 11 separate counts of wire fraud, which carries a penalty of up to 20 years in prison. The third is 1 count of conspiracy to solicit kickbacks, which carries a penalty of up to 5 years in federal prison. And the fourth is 19 counts of money laundering, which carries penalties ranging from 10 years to 20 years in prison. A copy of the 36-page charging indictment has been provided to you. The 4 individuals should make an initial appearance in federal court at 3:30 today, where they will be arraigned on these charges. The allegations in this indictment are serious and consequential, and they don't paint a pretty picture. The 4 men, James Burkhart, Dan Benson, Stephen Ganote, and Josh Burkhart, engaged in a 6-year scheme which is characterized by unbridled greed, deceit, and theft from programs we all count on to care for the elderly, the poor, the disabled, and the weak. This 16-month investigation revealed that these 4 men received over $16 million from fraud and kickback, which they used to finance a gratuitous life of luxury, including vacation homes at Lake Wawasee and in Marco Island, Florida, golf junkets, gambling in Las Vegas, private planes, diamonds, Rolex watches, and even gold bars. As I mentioned, the scheme was characterized by unbridled greed. In spite of being paid over $1 million a year in salary and bonuses, Burkhart and Benson combined with Ganote and Josh Burkhart to cut personal side deals, often involving kickbacks with ASC's outside vendors. And not just 1 or 2 vendors, numerous vendors, vendors involving the pharmacy business, the landscaping business, the electronic business, the furniture business, hospice care, vendors who provided American flags, vendors who provided even T-shirts for an Alzheimer's walk. Nothing was off the table for these 4 individuals. I also mentioned that this was a scheme which was characterized by deceit. As the money laundering charges allege, they laundered the money through a web of shell companies and bank accounts, and the money all ended up in their pockets. And I also mentioned that these victims, the theft in these victims, were from agencies and programs that could least afford it, that shouldn't be stolen from For the most part, this money did not belong to ASC. It belonged to the Health and Hospital Corporation of Marion County that runs our local public hospital system. But ultimately, it belonged to taxpayers because the money that funded these defendant side deals, the money that funded these kickbacks came from Medicare and Medicaid. Taxpayer-funded programs, taxpayer-funded health care programs that we all depend on to take care of the elderly, the poor, and the weak. Taxpayer-funded programs, health care programs that we depend on to take care of the elderly, the poor, and the weak, funded the vacation homes, the gambling, the golf junkets, the private planes, and the gold bars. This was a scheme of lies and deceit that financed their unbridled greed, and it stops today. I'm happy to be joined by many of the agents and agencies that worked with us at the United States Attorney's Office to bring this case to justice. This team investigated this case for well over 16 months. I'm first joined by one of the partners that this office has enjoyed for many years in fighting fraud, particularly fraud of taxpayer-funded health care programs, our Attorney General, Mr. Greg Zeller.
Thank you. Today I'm proud to join with our federal partners, the Office of the Attorney General, while we normally focus on our state roles inside of state government here. It's a good example of where we partner in a collaboration with our federal partners on the Medicaid program. We have a number of attorneys and investigators that work in our Medicaid Fraud Control Unit that works every day with these partners. And I really just appreciate the collaboration and the partnership that really brings these types of cases before. So my congratulations to the hard work of all the men and women who serve not only in our office but in the federal agencies that have brought this case. Thank you.
The lead agency in this investigation is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They have taken the lead in this and worked with all the other agencies here, including our office, to put together a fine investigation, in my opinion. The Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Criminal Division, Mr. Greg Massa, is here representing the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Good afternoon. My duties with the FBI are to lead investigations throughout the state of Indiana, focusing on a number of federal criminal violations, including violent crime, violent gangs, drug trafficking organizations. And many times we stand up here and discuss those types of cases. Today, it gives me honor to represent the investigative team to discuss what was a long and arduous investigation to uncover this scheme that Mr. Minkler laid out for you. These types of violations are just as abhorrent as those crimes of violence that plagues our city streets today. This was the culmination of a lot of hard work and effort. We had great partnerships in this investigation, and that wasn't just made overnight. The two AUSAs that were assigned to this case, Nick Linder and Cindy Cho, were passionate and phenomenal to work with, and were great partners. And at the federal level, having HHS, OIG, and their expertise, and IRS, and their dedication sitting with us every day was invaluable. But I'm particularly proud of the FBI's investigative team, led by Special Agent Victoria Madsen, who's an experienced, hardworking, dedicated agent who has led many complex financial investigations over the past several years here in Indianapolis. Joe Weston is a newer agent assigned to our division, and was really, this was the first case that he was brought in on. Also, it would not have been able to have been done without our forensic accounting team, who is really our special teams in this investigation, where they really traced the finances back through the shell companies Mr. Minkler described earlier. Our forensic accountants Ron Winings and Chris Knight were invaluable. As you read the indictment that was laid out for you today, as I did, it turned my stomach, and it should. This isn't about the hardworking men and women of American senior communities who get up every day and earn a fair wage and take care of the patients there in their facilities. It's about those individuals who were arrested this morning who tried to game the system, to line their own pockets, and they were caught. As we sat around a table about a month ago to discuss this investigation and as it was wrapping up and as we were preparing to bring it in front of grand jury, it's a very complex, multi-layered investigation, and each person is trying to summarize it up. And really it was our newest agent, Joe Weston, that summarized it and said it's about greed. And that's what this is truly at the end of it. I just want I want these individuals to know, and I want other individuals who are breaking federal laws, that the FBI is not going anywhere. Our partners are not going anywhere. We are dedicated to uncovering this type of federal criminal violations and holding these people accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Those are accurate comments, and one of the things that the FBI does so effectively on violent crime is to investigate and prosecute bank robberies, which are serious crimes. But I'd suggest to you that, at least based on the allegations in this indictment, the theft was over $16 million. That's probably more money than has been taken in all the bank robberies committed in this district in the last 20 years. So I think you could begin to understand the consequential nature and significance of this crime. I'm joined also by the special agent in charge of the Internal Revenue Service, who assisted our office and all the agencies in the investigation of the financial crimes and particularly the money laundering allegations. I'm pleased to have James Robnett from the Internal Revenue Service.
All right, thank you. So I'm the special agent in charge for the criminal division of IRS, a small unit that's tasked with not just looking into crimes of tax evasion, but a large part looking into complex financial investigations that involve allegations of money laundering and allegations of bank violations. So our agents are built for this. We're skilled, trained, educated accountants and financiers that looking at these matters, we are very skilled at connecting the dots and then uncovering the layers, as our FBI partners mentioned as well, the layers of this scheme, which involved sham corporations, international, domestic. And so our role in this investigation is critical in that we look at and we build the evidence we locate that evidence that goes to the money laundering violations. So I'm super proud to represent our agency and specifically our agents that were involved in this investigation. I'm not going to go over all the details that's been done to this point, but again, I'm privileged to stand here with this great investigative team. Even more privileged, I think, to represent the special agents of our IRS Criminal Division, and I look forward to seeing how this case moves forward and how this evidence proves out, and look forward to a continued great relationship with this investigative team behind me. Thank you.
This crime alleged in the indictment involved the theft from federal health care programs, one of the lead agencies, if not the lead agency, when that type of crime occurs is the Department of Health and Human Services. We are here today to recognize their good work and their Office of Inspector General. We have the Assistant Special Agent in charge from that department, Mr. Mario Pinto, here with us. Mario? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Mario Pinto, and I'm Assistant Special Agent in charge with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Inspector General's Office. Our agency primarily investigates allegations of fraud, waste, and abuse on departmental programs, which predominantly involve Medicare and Medicaid, and in this case, that's no exception. The allegations in this investigation that pertain to the solicitation and payment of kickbacks and conspiracy to commit health care fraud in the area of Medicare and Medicaid are illegal and undermines the trust we all place in our healthcare providers, suppliers, and others involved in the delivery of health care throughout this country. The fraud, combined with the payment of kickbacks in this investigation, can result in the overutilization of medical services, increased costs, corrupt medical decision-making, patient steering, and unfair competition. Those who both offer and receive kickbacks could be held criminally and civilly liable or face administrative sanctions under the anti-kickback statute. And these laws exist to protect Medicare and Medicaid beneficiaries, some of our most vulnerable members of society, as well as the programs themselves to ensure their solvency.
The Inspector General's office, working together with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, and in conjunction with the United States Attorney's Office, take these allegations very seriously and are committed to ensuring that those who perpetrate fraud in these programs are brought to justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. The two assistant United States attorneys, the federal prosecutors, who will be handling this case in court as it moves forward and who led this investigation are with me today. Assistant United States Attorney Nick Linder and Assistant United States Attorney Cindy Cho. I would like to introduce them to you, and we'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Josh, can you tell us, was it an inside whistleblower? Was it an agreed vendor? What was the first tip that led you to begin taking this thing apart?
Sure. It was a tip. We don't want to get into the details about exactly who that is, but it was a member of the public who stepped forward after being approached with some of the arrangements that you read about in the indictment and taking a look and saying, you know what, this doesn't sound right, and coming to federal authorities to tell us about it and help us really kick this off. So it really was a concerned member of the public who, good conscience, and came forward.
There are thousands of families in our area that have loved ones inside these communities. What do you want to say to them if they're thinking, oh my gosh, you know, what about my loved one?
Certainly. In this case, our priority throughout this investigation was to make sure none of the patients, none of the people in the nursing homes were harmed, and I can guarantee you that didn't happen. Our concern is, of course, that when you have a scheme of illegal fraud and kickbacks, all of a sudden the bubble will burst, the money will run out, and that's where the harm would occur. We stopped that before it could occur, so I would assure those families that none of their loved ones were ever in any risk of harm.
Josh, there were a number of political contributions that we came across. Does that concern you? And if it does, what are you guys doing?
Well, any of the contributions in this case will be thoroughly investigated. Let me make it clear to you that this investigation is by no means over. We've been looking into it for the last 16 months. Some people needed to be charged and to be arrested, but this investigation is by no means over.
So there could be more charges?
Correct.
Does that same answer apply to the vendors who were making these kickbacks?
Yes, it does, and I believe one of the vendors was charged today. If one of you could care to elaborate on that.
Yes, one vendor was charged by information this morning. He is the CEO of the landscaping company referred to in the indictment that you've reviewed. And of course, the investigation is ongoing as to the other companies referred to in the indictment.
Any other former officials with American Senior Communities that could also be charged, such as the CFO?
Yes, the investigation continues, including into his role.
Was there ever a situation where some of the residents needed reimbursement or anything like that of that nature from your findings?
Can you be more specific on that?
Reimbursement of any type of cash or out of money or anything? I know you guys kind of caught that before it reached that level, but was there any reimbursement on that side?
What essentially was happening in this case, it was a kickback scheme where the vendors would artificially inflate the cost, and the money would be split between the defendants in this case and the vendor. So the services were always rendered. Our concern, obviously, was this is not an illegal scheme like this is something that could not go on forever. Eventually the bubble would burst, and then real patients' lives would be affected, but I believe we've stopped that before it actually occurred.
$16 million, I mean, that is a ton of money. Can you talk about how does that not impact programs, and what are you guys going to do to get that money back?
Certainly. It does impact programs. That's money, $16 million that went into these defendants' pockets that could have gone to people that deserve Medicaid and Medicare, the poor, the elderly, the weak. That's who it was designed for. So the money was stolen from taxpayers and stolen from them, so certainly it did affect programs. If you look in the indictment, there is a massive forfeiture count where some of the items they purchased, the vacation homes, the gold bars, the diamonds, the bank accounts, have been seized. We will forfeit that. That's our intention, and certainly that money would be used primarily, returned to the victims.
Josh, can you describe for us maybe just one of these schemes, perhaps the one that just pushed you over the edge, the one that was just the most egregious, outrageous kickback scheme you saw?
Yeah, the kickbacks involving the American flags, I think that's sort of beyond the pale, where you have a situation where you want to purchase and obtain new American flags. Certainly, I think most people would think that would be done at cost. That's not something you would inflate and get a kickback on. That, although it wasn't the biggest dollar kickback scheme, that's one that certainly stuck in my craw.
And Josh, if you're looking at possibly more arrests, how far out is this spread?
Yeah. So for 16 months we investigated this, and there was a time where the individuals that we felt comfortable indicting, we had to present to the grand jury. But we will continue this investigation as long as it takes. I would anticipate a second round of charges out of this case.
For additional people?
That's correct.
What was the most difficult part of this investigation?
I mean, it's just a massive amount of information, a massive amount of defendants, a massive amount of programs, and looking at, like I said, it wasn't just one or two vendors, it was numerous vendors. So bringing this into a very concrete set of facts where 4 individuals could be indicted took every bit of 16 months.
So, Burkhart, it says that he made like $1.5 million in 2014, and can you just talk about that in light of the greed aspect?
Yeah,
We're not talking about people
sure.
that needed the money.
Right. That's accurate. It was unbridled greed. And the FBI Assistant Special Agent in charge mentioned this. Many of the people that we indict and talk about commit crimes, and their choices are limited. I'm not excusing what they did. I'm not saying it's right. But they don't have the options that obviously somebody like Mr. Burkhart had, who was already making over $1 million, who had an education, who had a supportive family, who had all the things you need to be successful in life. But he chose, at least according to the indictment, a path of unbridled, unacceptable greed. And that's principally why he was indicted and why he's facing justice today.